Well, we are coming into the second half of summer here on our homestead based in southern Queensland, which means we need to consider what we're going to do with our gardens as we approach the warmest part of the year. There's two perfectly valid options available to us, so stick around because in this video I'm going to go through two strategies you might want to adopt if you are gardening in a really warm climate and it's about to heat up. In a moment, I'll take you through the gardens and we'll go through some of the activities that we're doing here in the middle of January, so right in the middle of summer here on our homestead gardens. But I want to talk to you first about two strategies as we start to approach the warmer side of summer. So we've already passed the longest day of the year. The days aren't getting any longer, but they certainly are getting warmer. And we're in for some really hot days, especially as we approach the end of January and well into February. Now, we got here in February, so we sort of know what to expect as far as February temperatures go, but we didn't start gardening until, well, really the middle of the year. So I don't know what every single month is like here in this region, and every year's different anyway. They've just declared another La Nina cycle, which means we're in for a really hot, wet summer. Well, wet in particular summer, and so that might change again next year. But what I really want to know is, what's going to grow well, how do things respond in every month of the year. So strategy number one when it comes to that hot part of summer is you might want to let your gardens go a little bit dormant and take a break. Like, consider the gardener for a moment. The days are going to be really hot. You're not going to want to be spending hours and hours in your gardens. You can't. And so, I guess you can. You can garden a little bit in the morning and a little bit in the evening and, kind of take a break from it in the middle of the day. That might be one strategy, and I guess that's what we're going to be doing. So, kind of spoiler alert, we're going to continue on. But strategy number one is just to kind of let things take a break. And so I would let the remainder of my summer crops kind of get harvested, then I'd chop and drop them or compost them, mulch the garden beds, or do any soil amendments you might need to do. Like, we've discovered that our soil's still pretty heavy clay, so I want to get some gypsum into it, and I'm doing that between plantings. But if you were kind of putting your garden beds to rest, that'd be a great time to do some soil amendments. Shut down your irrigation system, mulch everything, weed everything, and just let it sit for a month or two. So through February, March, it's going to be really hot. And then coming into March, you're going to start thinking about autumn planting anyway. So autumn's going to be upon you pretty quickly. You're not really going to be shutting down for long, but it just gives you a break, gives the gardens a break. Look, realistically, the garden beds are going to continue being active. All that microbial activity is going to keep improving your soil health and, structure and nutrition overall. But you've not got any plants in there kind of accessing those materials, soaking up water. And so you just got to consider what your gardens need in that dormant state. And really, it's not a lot. So that's strategy number one. Strategy number two is, figure out what's going to grow well in that really hot part of summer and kind of lean into some of those crops, and then, just add a little bit extra into your gardens to get a little bit more produce out of that second half of summer. But consider that you're not going to get everything that you've been growing, through late spring and into early summer. So for us, that means we're going to do a whole lot more successions of things that we've already started. We've got tomatoes in. I want even more tomatoes. We want to be canning tomatoes as we get into autumn. So that means more tomatoes, more, trellises for them to grow up. So I'm actually in the middle of building more garden beds right now. So we'll get more tomatoes in. More corn. We love it. We eat tons of it. So corn's an easy one to grow. And I'm using corn as a bit of a water soaking strategy at the moment, because we've discovered, and I'll talk to you about this in a moment, that the bottom part of our garden beds are really wet. And corn, it loves its moisture. So I'm going to be planting a ton of corn to soak up a whole lot of moisture out of those areas. What else are we planting? Beetroot. I'm going to do another round of beetroot. I think it'll do okay. And I've also got a little bit of a strategy for kind of semi-shading it with some other plants. And so your leafy greens and things like that aren't going to do so well in that second part of summer. I'm going to get a head start on some leeks. I'm going to start them from seed in the garden bed. So it's definitely very early for planting leeks, but I think I can probably start them now and get a real head start on, normally I'd maybe look at starting them autumn or very, very late summer. We'll start them now and see how they go. And then herbs. The other thing we're going to really focus on is our herbs. Now, your herbs are hardy and woody, and so they do really well in kind of harsh conditions. So I guess one way to think about it is think about the plants that you can kind of abuse a little bit. The ones that really cop a beating or a little bit of neglect, those are the ones you could probably focus on for the second half of summer. And because this is a real learning experience for us, we're kind of learning our climate, we're learning how these gardens respond to our particular microclimate. I don't really want to stop the process. I don't really need a break right now, but I do want to know how our gardens grow in the second half of summer. So that's what we're doing. Being in the garden and having my hands in the ground, taking care of plants, I find to be an incredibly mindful experience. In fact, staying grounded like that has been one of the ways I take care of my mental health. Speaking of which, I wanted to let you know that today's video is made in paid partnership with BetterHelp. You know, starting a homestead in our 40s has been an incredibly challenging but rewarding and exciting experience, but I'll admit it hasn't been without its serious ups and downs, and sometimes it's been downright overwhelming, from thoughts of what if we fail, what would we do this late in life, to, you know, what if I let my family down? Having someone to talk to has been the extra support that I needed, and I've learned that it's okay to invite external support into some of those overwhelming moments. BetterHelp is an online therapy service, and it's great. It's super easy to sign up for. You just fill out a short questionnaire, and within a couple of days you get matched with a credentialed therapist. And it's really convenient. You can do it from home, you can do it via phone, video chat, even just messaging. And the great thing is, if the first match isn't the exact right fit for you, you can just switch at no extra cost. You know, gardening has helped me to stay grounded, but sometimes you just need that little bit of extra support. And so if you feel like life is overwhelming, like it's just piling up, then maybe therapy is something that you want to consider trying. If you use the link on your screen right now or down in the description below, betterhelp.com/rusticspirits, you'll get 10% off your first month of therapy. So thanks to BetterHelp, and now let's get back into the garden. I really want one of these to go to seed because we just had no success with them. We were way too late, but they're just getting munched. And it's mostly little aphids and green caterpillars. But if I can find a healthiest one and leave it, it may develop a seed head. I just think we've got too much of it. And besides, the chickens will eat this. We're going to have a field day with all the bugs on this. Look at that. If I'm a chicken, that's what I'm going for. 1, 2, 3, 99, 100. Yeah. These are these teepees that we put up for trellis, and I don't know what, we've cut down these little small trees. We've got hundreds of them all over the property. Oh wow, I'm about to lose the whole thing. They're definitely not ironbark, because if they were ironbark, one of the properties of all this ironbark that we've got growing around here is they just don't get done by termites or wood borers. These are, look, have a look here. Oh, can you see that? They've literally, something's crawled up or flown up and bored holes all through this trellis, and it's just, yeah, it's collapsed. So I've got beans coming up it and the whole thing's coming down. So I think they're all gonna break. Yeah, I need to replace all 3 of these. I've got some iron bark that we just cut off the sawmill. It's not gonna look as natural as all these other teepees that we did, but function over form in this case. Okay, one of the downsides of the teepee method is everything comes up to a point. So if you've got something vining like beans or like tomatoes that are kind of going to reach a top, then everything kind of coalesces in at this point that it's competing for space at the top. So it works to some extent. I like them for things where I don't mind a little bit of messiness, say like snow peas. Just let them kind of take over and get all entangled and do their thing. Beans a little bit the same. But in this case, I'm going to abandon this teepee since it's already, well, it's abandoned us. And I'm going to go with just a really simple trellis. So I'm going to take 2 of these, stake them in the ground. We're going to put some jute twine. I like to use jute twine because it breaks down. So season to season, it's not wire, so it doesn't get hot, it doesn't rust, it doesn't stab you when you don't expect it. So if you've been following along with our garden journey, you'll know that we're experimenting with an ancient grain called Khorasan. It's a type of wheat, and we definitely want to have a go at milling our own flour. But this first little patch was number one, just to see how well it grows here, see what its needs are, and then to collect the seeds from it. So we've got acclimatized seeds for our next patch. So I would normally probably leave wheat a little bit longer. Wheat grows in our region, normally over winter. And when it's harvested, it looks really dry, really split apart in the heads, really dry and yellow. Some of this is still quite green, but the king parrots have been getting in here, and if I have a look at some of these, they've snipped them, and in fact if I look down here, yeah, look, they're just dropping them to the ground here, munching them on the ground, and we're going to lose most of it. So what we're going to do is, hopefully this works, it's a bit experimental, we're going to cut it all, kind of sheaf it up, and then bundle it up, and then hang it in a dry place to just kind of finish, drying out, and then we've got our seeds for our next planting. Trying to be careful. We started cucumbers in here in amongst the wheat, and now they are well and truly established. They're going to need something to climb up.
They just doubled overnight.
Yeah, so they're doing really well. In fact, yep, we're starting to get a few little fruit on them.
Me in my natural habitat, drying thing. So I might just bundle it up with some twine around it and hang it upside down. Oh yeah, that works.
So I'm just running the string up and over that wire up there, and then you've kind of got 2, and then I just find the first offshoot there, come in under it. Yep, so I'm just under that first little leaf offshoot there. It just kind of gives it something to grip onto. You could just peg these into the ground, but it's easy enough just to tie it to the plant loosely. And by the time it really starts to establish itself up this string, yeah, the string, the weight of the plant is going to keep the string kind of in that downward position, and then you can just kind of weave it in and out of one or both of those strings to get it started. But then these little tendrils here are just going to find these strings, and they're just going to So what's really interesting is this is the second patch of garlic that I planted, and in that first patch that I planted right on the right date, you're supposed to plant on the shortest day, harvest on the longest day, it didn't do so well. And so I thought, well, maybe I got the dates wrong for this climate. You know, maybe I've got to go a little bit earlier, and I've talked to some other gardeners and they've said, yeah, go sort of March, April, and then harvest around October, November. Okay, so that's what I'd try. But then I came up to this patch, which I planted after the shortest day of the year, and I'm getting some really ideal looking plants. Let's see if we can find one here. Well, that's a small one, but they've split perfectly into the cloves as they're supposed to. And I've got, you know, really great example of one there, and have a look. That's exactly what it should look like. What I think it is that wet that we're having at that wet problem that we're having down at the bottom section of our garden. So everything up here draining really well, and garlic definitely doesn't like to sit with soggy feet. Location, location, location. And you know, that's a big part of gardening in a new garden, in a new climate, is working it out. What grows where? Literally, we're talking a difference of, that's 3-4 meters away, but drainage, sunlight conditions, moisture, evaporation, all of that stuff, it can change within the space of a few meters. Perfect. Yeah, nice. These ones went in after the shortest day of the year. So,
They did better.
And they've done better. So that tells me I've got my dates pretty close to accurate. I'm going to stick with short day, long day. It's how I remember it. I've been able to be slack here and go, we went maybe a month after the shortest day. They went in like July some point, and then we're picking them here 3 weeks after the longest day. Oh.
What?
So one thing that I've read is that a strange companion planting is strawberries and garlic.
That's why we planted them here.
Yeah, I know. There's this, you know, like symbiotic relationship. I don't know what the advantage is. I've never really looked into it, but apparently it makes them both grow better. If you look at the strawberry plants we planted here versus just a bit further that way and then that one up in there, these ones have just, they're gonna...
There was an initial transplant shock with these ones. They did not enjoy it.
Yeah, but they're doing super well. Yeah, give us a couple.
Look at that. It's too little.
Yeah, but full of flavour.
They taste like strawberry roll-up.
And the garlic that's growing in this garden, I mean, granted, that's a fair distance from those strawberries. I'm not sure I could understand. But then you've got like mycelium networks and, you know, microbial activity that's not limited to just the space beneath the plant. Maybe there's something in that.
Sorry, can't talk. Spitting.
One of the things I really want to do is get some corn started now that we've cleared potatoes out of this bed. And the reason that I'm thinking of picking corn for this bed is we've got a particular problem with this. You can probably already see the land slopes this way. So we've got this real funky shape and layout of our garden beds. You know that you've seen. Well, I'll put another drone shot up so you can see what it looks like. It's cool. It's just a design thing. It's not really functional. But obviously sloped land means your water runs with the slope. But when you put garden beds in kind of line with the slope, your water just kind of finds its way into these channels and more easily works its way down to the bottom. So the garden beds that are at the top of the section, they're great. Yeah, I mean, number one, this soil is still a bit too clay heavy, so we're going to amend it and work with it, but it's just really soggy, and I've actually got this irrigation turned off at the moment. So the key to planting in soggy ground is anything with a really big leaf is going to do what's called transpiration or evapotranspiration. So if you want to know what plants can kind of survive a really wet environment, think about your plants that have really big leaves. Your corn, sunflowers, your zucchinis have got a nice big leaf on them, bananas have got a massive leaf on them, and some of your leafy greens are even going to do all right in a wet garden bed. They're going to suck up a whole lot of that moisture, and that big broad leaf is going to be able to transpire some of the moisture up into the air. So we're going to get some corn in this garden, and we're going to do it a little bit strategically. We'll plant it on the northern edge because our sun's in the north, obviously, and that's going to provide a little shade wall for some greens that we can plant back in. And normally you wouldn't do greens in the second half of summer. It's just way too hot. But if we can give them a little bit of shade and they're going to have plenty of moisture, I think they're going to do really well. We've put these vines all on the ends of our garden beds. You probably saw that in the previous video. And they're doing a good job of kind of weed suppression. They're keeping the grass from getting into our gardens area. And so this big leafy canopy does help with all the moisture here out on the edges, but it also helps because the grass just really can't grow where it's not getting a whole heap of sunlight. And the extra bonus, check it out. Oh. Well, overall, I am stoked about how these gardens have gone in our first 7-8 months of gardening here in this brand new climate, well, brand new for us at least. And we are well and truly in a learning phase right now. Not that we're new to gardening, but we are definitely new to this climate. In fact, I don't even really know what to call this climate. So everything we're learning, we're basically reapplying all the gardening principles that we know to learning a whole new climate. And this climate is weird. When we got here, I would have said maybe it's temperate because it was sort of the cold season, but there were fairly even temperatures, a little bit of frost. Then everything really dried out and we had some hot winds come in through spring, and I would have said we were kind of semi-arid, everything went kind of brown, and then as summer came on, everything started to green up, and every now and then we'd get these bouts of humidity, so it feels somewhat subtropical. And I don't know, maybe we're just kind of on the cusp of all of these climates merging together, and that's really the point, isn't it? These tools like, you know, your climate charts or your planting charts based on climate, they're there to kind of guide you, but they can't tell you exactly how it's going to work for exactly where you are. And that's the point of gardening, really, isn't it? You learn the principles, you learn what different plants like, their conditions they like, the time of year generally that you have to plant them, and then you learn your own microclimate. And it can change, you know, the property next door can be completely different. Wind conditions can change, and shade conditions, and it all goes in to basically you having to develop a really specific garden program for your own garden. And that's what we're doing. And that's why primarily I want to continue gardening throughout the second half of summer, even though I know it's going to be harsh. I know those temperatures are really going to get up there. I'm expecting some 40+ days. There's not a lot of things that like to grow in that, but in saying that, we're doing a few things differently. Like I said, we're doing some natural shade walls with corn. We're doing some syntropic agroforestry with some interplanting of, you know, different canopy species. So all of that is a learning experience as well, and I want to gain as much knowledge about our land as I can through the process. So we're going to focus on those plants, like I said, that you can kind of neglect a little bit. Things that, like tomatoes, they grow like a weed anyway. They should do all right. Corn, it's basically just an exaggerated grass. It's going to do all right. Our zucchinis have been popping off, so I'm going to, you know, continue with them. And we've just freed up a ton of extra space. All that harvesting, all that cleanup work that we've just done in the gardens, I've got a heap of extra space. So we'll focus on those plants over the next few months. We'll learn what we can, but I'm really happy with how our gardens are going so far. So a couple of things that we've really struggled with though, and maybe you can, you know, hit us down below with your thoughts. Chilies and capsicums. I really thought they'd do well out here. Like, it's warm enough, my soil temperature's warm enough. I think I've got the moisture conditions right. I just have not been able to get them to sprout from seed. So you got any tips on chilies and capsicums? I don't know why I can't get them to sprout. And then beans, those beans on the trellis just over my shoulder there. I have always planted my beans at the same time as I start my tomatoes and never been a problem getting beans started. These ones have only just started coming up. So I don't know what it is. Soil conditions maybe. Like I said, we've done some soil amendments just as we've been in here pottering in the garden this week. So we've done some gypsum to deal with our clay problems. I've added an organic fertilizer just to beef up the organics in the soil. So that includes some, you know, chicken manure, blood and bone, feather meal. So it's natural, it's organic. That's just going to help give the plants a little bit of extra feed, especially as we get into these hot few weeks and months coming up. But maybe it's water. I do think I've got a particular water content problem, and I might deal with this in an upcoming video where I talk about our Homestead water systems. And spoiler alert, I think we've got a salt problem in our water. It's only slight, but I really think that it's maybe affecting a few different things. Definitely the taste of our water, and possibly even getting seedlings started. So that'll be in an upcoming video, and maybe that's what's affecting, especially starting seedlings here. But that's going to do it for this week. Hey, if you want to catch up on everything else in our gardens, on our homestead, I'll leave a playlist here for all the other gardens videos we've done. But otherwise, we'll see you next week. Did I hit record? I did.